LSU lands a commitment from its first defensive tackle of the 2025 class and a massive surprise from the number one wide receiver in the country. We're talking about it on this Friday edition of Locked on LSU. Let's get it.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Glad to have you aboard with us here. Belated happy 4th of July to everyone. Hope you had a great day celebrating our nation's independence. I did. Great time with family. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. On YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. LSU lands its first defensive tackle commit for the class of 2025. A gigantic surprise from the number one wide receiver in the country. 2 more decisions coming on Friday should be good news for the Tigers. And where do the LSU baseball Tigers go now that the number one shortstop in the portal is off the board? We got all that on today's episode. We are brought to you by Game Time. We are brought to you by, Game Time. We are brought to you by Game Time. I knew we were brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On College, all one word, Locked On College, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thrilled to have you here with us and thrilled to share the news that LSU landed a commitment from Zion Williams. This was certainly expected, but the big defensive tackle out of Lufkin, Texas, made it official on Friday, announcing his commitment to LSU. So Zion Williams, he produced a video he announced on his social media, Twitter, X, and all the outlets had it as well. He's a 4-star defensive tackle for the class of 2025, 6'3", 330. I mean, this is a guy who's entering his senior year of high school. I mean, just think about how big you were in high school or anybody in your school. Was anybody 6'3", 330? Not in my school. And we were a big school too. But so you have a massive, both literally and figuratively, a massive commit here. And Zion Williams was a guy that Bo Davis, LSU's defensive line coach, was recruiting at the University of Texas. And when Bo was hired by LSU, he just continued recruiting Zion Williams now to LSU. And if you read any of the quotes that Zion Williams had after his commitment, he cited his relationship with Bo Davis as a main reason why he committed to LSU. And look, this is one of the reasons LSU hired Bo Davis. Not only is he widely regarded as one of the greatest technical defensive line coaches in the country from the Pete Jenkins coaching tree. You know, Coach Pete Jenkins both recruited and coached Bo Davis at LSU and has continued to mentor him throughout his coaching career. But he's also known as a great recruiter. And LSU needs to fortify, quite honestly, every level of its defense. And Bo Davis is making great strides to doing that. And Zion Williams is a big part of this. So keep in mind, we know that defensive tackle was a huge position of need for LSU here in the 2024 portal class. And they added guys like Gio Paez and JVR Suggs, but they missed on the really big targets. Dominic Williams from TCU was the one that really, my goodness, everybody was after. And we know that he wanted a gigantic NIL number as well. But ultimately, it came down to adding and fortifying with numbers and veteran players. But when you look to next season, to 2025, Jacobian Guillory, he's entering his 5th year at LSU. He's going to be out of eligibility. Jalen Lee, who started his career at Florida, he's entering his 5th year. He's going to be out of eligibility. Gio Paez, the Wisconsin transfer, he's going to be out of eligibility. His last season coming up in 2024. So you're losing a lot of these really veteran players. And when you look at what might be there in 2025, you brought in JVR Suggs from Grand Valley State. He has another year. He can use it. Kimo Makanaeoli has another year after 2024, can use it if he wants. You got Sean Washington, who came in from the JUCO ranks. You got Preston Hickey, who was a transfer, preferred walk-on transfer from Oklahoma State. And you got the three freshmen, Dominic McKinley, Demiron Johnson, and Ahmad Bro. But understand what I just said there about the players potentially returning. Suggs is a guy from Grand Valley, Division II. Makanaioli was an offensive lineman his whole career. Preston Hickey's a walk-on. Sean Washington is a JUCO transfer. The other three, McKinley, Johnson, Bro, all freshmen in 2024. In 2025, you are going to have to, again, fortify that defensive line with not only experience, but depth that you can build around. So a really good start with Zion Williams picking the LSU Tigers. He is a 4-star out of the state of Texas. He's the 31st best defensive tackle in the country. And this is a big get, both literally and figuratively, for LSU at a major, major position of need. So Zion Williams is now in the boat, and the question kind of becomes who's next. And as a matter of fact, Friday is going to be a massive day for the LSU football Tigers. It's not one, but two defensive linemen are set to make their announcements on Friday, and LSU is likely to get both of them. So I want to talk about both of those guys as we continue. And my goodness, maybe the biggest surprise so far of the 2025 recruiting cycle, with the number one wide receiver in the country, DeCorian Moore, a one-time LSU commit, announcing his destination. We'll get to that as we continue here on Locked on LSU, your team every day. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. If it's superchargers or roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So Zion Williams becomes the first defensive tackle commit for LSU's class of 2025, but the Tigers should very well get more good news on Friday as both Damen Shanklin and Brandon Brown are set to make their announcements. So we'll get this word on Friday, depending on when you're listening or watching. You may already know this, but Damen Shanklin, let's start there, is an edge. Huge recruit here by Kevin Peoples, the new edge defensive end coach for LSU. Blake Baker brought him in from Missouri, a tactical expert coaching the edge rushers, the defensive ends, but also a great recruiter in his own right. And Kevin Peoples looks like he's going to pop a really big prospect for 2025. So Damen Shanklin, if you're not familiar, is a consensus 4-star recruit for the class of 2025. He is the number 8 in the composite. He's the number 86 overall player. So he's a top 100 player nationally and the number 12 edge in the country. He's the number 1 player from the state of Indiana. As a matter of fact, 24/7 has him rated as the number 48 overall player in the country. So that's the highest you see him right now. Rivals has him down at 210. Not sure what's going on over at Rivals with that, but it goes to show you sometimes the disparity and discrepancy in all the different services, which is why it's good to lean on the composite. And On3's composite has Damen Shanklin as the number 86 overall player, any position in the country. 6'5", 235-pounder. He's the number 1 player in the state of Indiana. So, one of the things we often talk about when it comes to recruiting out of state guys is, and look, Zion Williams is from Texas. And here's Damen Shanklin from Indiana. And one of the things we often talk about when it comes to recruiting out-of-state guys is if you're going to go out of state, make sure it's worth going out of state. If you've listened to my show, my radio show After Further Review, if you've been here on Locked on LSU, you've heard me say this before. You got to put the fence around Louisiana. And if you're going to go outside of the state, it's got to be for a prospect that is worthy getting on a plane and going to see. When you recruit a 3-star cornerback out of Las Vegas, doesn't make a lot of sense. When you recruit a defensive end out of Minnesota, doesn't make a lot of sense. Both those guys that I'm talking about, as a matter of fact, and Jeremiah Hughes and Jackson Howard, both left after LSU after 1 year of not playing much. If you're going to get on a plane and go to Michigan to recruit the number 1 player in the country and a quarterback in Bryce Underwood, that's very much worth your efforts. If you're going to get on a plane and go to LA to recruit the number 1 cornerback in the country in Elias Ricks, worth your efforts. If you're going to get on a plane and go to South Florida to recruit Patrick Peterson, very much worth your efforts. If you're going to go to Indiana to recruit Damen Shanklin, who is a top 100 overall player nationally, yes, that is worth your efforts to go get a guy that's a top 100 player nationally, an elite edge defender that you can get to LSU. When you look at this recruiting class so far, 7 commits from the state of Louisiana, 2 from Texas, and that may grow on Friday. I'll get to that in a second. 1 from Arkansas, the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country, and Carius Kern. 1 from the state of Florida. 1 from Michigan, that, of course, is Bryce Underwood, the number 1 player in the country. 1 from Mississippi. My point is, if you're going to go outside of the state, make sure it's worth going outside of the state. And when it comes to Damen Shanklin, that would check the box. So Damen Shanklin set to make his announcement on Friday. The other player set to announce on Friday is Brandon Brown. This is another guy who is a defensive lineman that was being recruited by Bo Davis to the University of Texas. As a matter of fact, Brandon Brown is a Texas commit. He committed to Texas back in December to Bo Davis. And he is a big-time interior defensive lineman. 6 foot, 290. He's out of Melbourne, Florida. He is a 4-star prospect. And this is a guy that was committed to Texas. And you can say, and I talk about this all the time, who else is offered? Well, he was committed to Texas. He was also considering Tennessee and Miami. When you look at his offer list, Texas A&M was there as well. I mean, this is a big-time 4-star prospect out of Florida that offers from everybody. Florida, Georgia, Florida State, USC, Ohio State, Oregon, offers from everybody. And when you have offers from that kind of a list and you're committed to Texas because of Bo Davis, and then Bo Davis leaves Texas for LSU and starts recruiting you to LSU, and you flip, which we're all expecting on Friday Brandon Brown to do, that's a massive attaboy hat tip to Bo Davis. He's already gotten Zion Williams, who was thought to be a Texas lean because of Bo Davis. Brandon Brown is a Texas commitment who is thought to be a guy that's going to flip from Texas to LSU because of Bo Davis. It's already paying dividends having Bo Davis on campus. So this LSU class for 2025 that we've talked a lot about, it had 12 commitments, 9 of them on the offensive side, only 3 defensive players. And people have been asking, okay, well, where are the defensive commits for LSU? Well, here they come. You've got Zion Williams. We're expecting both Damen Shanklin and Brandon Brown coming up on Friday. And there could be more ahead here in the month of July, as June was a little quiet. It was very loud in Tuscaloosa, but June was quiet in Baton Rouge. July is proving to be potentially very noisy on a very positive end for LSU if they're able to continue to finish all of these recruiting processes and get these players in the boat like they did with Zion Williams. We're expecting Damen Shanklin and Brandon Brown. If the Tigers are able to get home with those guys, then you'd be talking about 15 commits for the class of 2020. The class of 2025. We'll see how it goes. The other gigantic surprise on Thursday, on the 4th of July, was DeCorian Moore. We all know DeCorian Moore's story right now. He is the consensus number 1 wide receiver in the country. He surprised the recruiting world when he committed to LSU. About a month ago, decommitted from LSU, reopened his commitment. He's from the state of Texas in Duncanville. And everybody has made the assumption all along, everybody within recruiting circles, that DeCorian Moore is going to end up going to the University of Texas and staying home. DeCorian Moore made his announcement on Thursday, on the 4th of July, and he is not staying home. He's not picking LSU either. DeCorian Moore is going to Oregon. And that has sent shockwaves throughout the recruiting community. But I will say this. You would absolutely love to have DeCorian Moore in your class. LSU needs receivers in the class of 2025. A couple of the guys you recruited in 2023 have already hit the transfer portal. Jaylen Brown, most notable among them. You're going to lose Kyron Lacey, Chris Hilton, very likely, CJ Daniels, Xavion Thomas after this 2024 season. You've got to stockpile at receiver. And what better place to go than the consensus number one receiver in the country, DeCorian Moore, who you had committed. But when he decommitted and was thought to be going to Texas, that stings, because if you're going to lose a player, I say this all the time, if you're going to miss out on a player, you'd much rather miss out to another conference when you're never going to see that player again. It's always more difficult when you miss out on a player and he goes to a place where you got to see him again. He could beat you. Devontae Smith is a great example of that. Guy from a meet who picked Alabama over LSU, went on to win a Heisman Trophy at Alabama. That stinks. The late Joe McKnight, the flip side of that. I remember sitting in the Baton Rouge River Center on that national signing day at the Bayou Bash when Joe McKnight picked USC over LSU, and it went over like a fart in church, y'all. I mean, the air went out of that building. But you never had to see Joe McKnight again. He played in the Pac-12. He played for USC. You never had to compete against him. So if you're going to lose DeCorian Moore, that stinks. Of course, you'd rather have him. But I'd much rather DeCorian Moore go to the Pacific Northwest and play at Oregon in the Big Ten. Like, enjoy those December games against Iowa, as opposed to going to Texas, where he's going to team up with Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, and potentially beat you in the future. So it stings not getting him, but you'd much rather miss out on DeCorian Moore to Oregon than to Texas. The hunt for receivers continues for the LSU football team because they've got to fortify that position here in the 2025 class. Okay, speaking of the 2025 class or season, another prominent LSU baseball target off the board to a conference opponent. What is left for LSU? We'll talk about it as we wrap up here on Locked on LSU, your team every day. We have talked for a month now about Gavin Keelan. Gavin Keelan is the one of the top players in the portal, shortstop from Louisville. Keelan. I keep mispronouncing his name, and I apologize. I've said it three different ways. I've said Keelan, and Keelan. It's Keelan. My apologies. Gavin Keelan. Doesn't really matter now. Gavin Keelan on the 4th of July announced he's going to the University of Tennessee. And I don't mind saying this to you, but through my connections with LSU's collective, I am comfortable in saying that LSU made its healthiest offer for a baseball player in the portal ever to Gavin Keelan. And it still wasn't enough. Tennessee, the defending national champ, outbid LSU, not by much, but they did. They're also the defending national champ. And if you've got the last two national champions, two amazing recruiters as head coaches, and NIL offers that are comparable, one slightly above the other, what wins out? And in this instance, it was Tennessee. So Gavin Keelan is going to Tennessee. Wyatt Hensler, another prospect we've talked about here from Penn in the Ivy League, who had been committed to A&M and took visits after Jim Schlossnagle left for Texas. Wyatt Hensler visited LSU. He has reaffirmed his commitment to A&M. So Wyatt Hensler at A&M, along with Caden Kent and Gavin Grahovac. There's your infield in College Station. Gavin Keelan at Tennessee, likely going to play second base at in Knoxville as they return the shortstop. But you look around and all the names we've talked about, Fisher from Ole Miss, I'm told, is likely landing in Tennessee as well in Knoxville. So you look around and you say, what's left for LSU? I know there's a lot of LSU fans that are not happy with how all this has transpired in the portal. And with LSU missing out on some really big targets, because we're not used to that. I mean, LSU is the premier program in the history of college baseball. 7 national championships, the best fan base in college baseball, nation's leader in attendance since 1996. You all know. I don't need to spell it off for you know it. I know it's difficult to watch LSU miss out on these guys. I think this is something that we've all got to get used to and understanding that this is what the transfer portal era is and is going to be. There are programs that have flat outbid LSU because they can. It's interesting. Arkansas has spent its NIL money very clearly on pitching. Zach Root, the crown jewel of their class. Well, Dave Van Horn is a pitching expert. He leads with pitching. Tennessee has led with position players and offense. Gavin Keelan, Fisher from Ole Miss. That's who they've gone after and sunk their resources into. A&M sunk their resources into retaining their roster with Jace Laviolette, Gavin Grahovac, Caden Kent. LSU, this portal class, is very good. And it's addressed a ton of needs. I think a lot of LSU fans are losing sight of that because you look at these big name portal prospects, Gavin Keelan, Zach Root, the names we've talked about. And they're not landing in Baton Rouge, and you're wondering why. Well, the reason why is LSU's pockets aren't as deep. And there's only so much that your history and your coaching staff can sell if another program is going to drop a bag. But all that said, I look at LSU's roster for next year, and I mean this sincerely. This isn't, I'm not a homer. I think anybody that's ever heard me speak on anything knows that. If I think they're going to stink, I'm going to tell you I think they're going to stink. But I look at LSU's outfield and I go, okay, well, Jake Brown, Ashton Larson, really good players. I mean, Josh Pearson could be one of the corner outfield spots. Chris Stanfield coming in Auburn could win that spot as well. You could be good in your outfield. Everyone's excited about Milam, could play second or short next year. Blaze Priester's your starting catcher. You brought in a plethora of first base DH guys. If it's Hernandez, if it's Eddie Yaman, if it's Beck, who they just added from Incarnate Word, you've got plenty there, options and depth. The spot, and by the way, and I'm negligent in this part as well. I haven't talked enough about Tanner Reeves. Tanner Reeves is a JUCO signee for LSU that this staff is very high on, and I think could very well end up winning the third base job either way. But I think you look at shortstop and catcher as the two spots where you're looking going, I don't feel great about it right now. I think LSU feels really good with the pitching staff. Chase Shores is back. You're very excited about Cade Anderson. Hopefully you get Griffin Herring back as well. You've added Devin Sheeran out of the transfer portal. Zach Cohen. I mean, you feel good right now about your pitching staff. It's catcher and shortstop. That's kind of your big question mark right now. And listen, if Michael Braswell is a guy, as I understand, who's going to make somewhere in the neighborhood of $75K to $100K in this draft at the end of the draft, why not offer Michael Braswell $100K to come back, run it back in a senior year to make a run at a national championship? Well, then you return your middle infield and Braswell and Milam. Maybe it's Tanner Reeves who could go make a run at third base. I'll give you one other name to keep an eye on out of the transfer portal, who's a guy that's highly sought after. I think a lot of people in baseball circles know this name, but it's Daniel Dickerson. He's from Utah Valley, and that may not be a sexy program, but he hit 367 with 18 bombs this past year. He led Utah Valley in batting average, slugging, hits, total bases, and stolen bases. That's a guy that could play one of the middle infield spots. If Braswell leaves and you're able to go pursue a guy like Dickerson, maybe Milam plays short, Dickerson plays second, maybe. And look, maybe we'll see if LSU is going after Dickerson, but that's another guy that's in the portal right now that's had a good college career to this point. That would make sense. So, I guess I just look at it and say, I understand. Yes, obviously, you'd be so much more excited if you'd gotten Gavin Keelan, if you'd landed Caden Kent, if you had landed one of the big name, Wyatt Hensler, one of the big name players in the portal that we've been talking about for a while, and miss out on them, not only missing out on them, but missing out on them to SEC opponents really stings. It stings and it stinks. But I also look at where LSU's roster is and the signing class coming in as well, and I go, I get why literally every member of the D1 baseball staff projected LSU in Omaha next year. That's before you even know what's going to happen with the rest of this portal cycle and building up this roster. So I understand the angst. Yes, you would love for LSU to have landed one of these big time names in the portal. It hasn't happened in the way of position players, right? You've done it on the mound, no doubt. But I also feel really good about where this roster is, the talent you have returning. Certainly feel good about the pitching staff. And let's see what happens between now and the start of the semester. Certainly the draft will have a big part of that as well. So Tigers continue on, but they'll do it without Gavin Keelan as he's announced his destination. And Wyatt Hensler, it's Knoxville, and Wyatt Hensler is staying committed to Texas A&M. Okay, as we have more info on this recruiting class for baseball, we'll talk about it. And I'm fully expecting to have a bonus coverage, a bonus content episode on Saturday where we can talk about hopefully 2 more football commits for the Tigers, as we're expecting decisions from both Damen Shanklin and Brandon Brown. So be here for it. Hey, if you're new and you're not subscribed up yet, what are you waiting on? Do it on your favorite podcast app. Subscribe, rate us, leave a review, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every day for Locked on LSU. And thanks to everybody watching on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and smash that like button. Okay, have a great Friday, and you better believe we'll be here for bonus content on Saturday and Sunday as well. We'll look for you then, right here on Locked on LSU, your team every day.